Welcome back to the deep dive. So usually we're elbow deep in, dense academic papers or maybe some complex financial reports.
Right, the heavy stuff.
Exactly. But today, we're diving into something, well, different. It's actually proprietary satirical content.
Mm-hmm. Sounds fun, but it's got a serious edge. We're dissecting a skit, part of the LoopLaugh series.
That's the one. It's called Social Security, the casino jackpot that never hits. Quite the title.
It definitely sets a tone, and our mission here is really to pull apart its structure and the financial critique baked right into it.
Okay, let's unpack this because, it's not just a few jokes thrown together. This piece is authored by Devin McClarty and it's managed by D Investment Enterprise, LLC. It's quite structured.
Very structured. It's using comedy, specifically a game show format, to land a punch about the U.S. retirement system, or at least a specific view on it.
A kind of theatrical critique, wouldn't you say? Highlighting what they see as flaws.
Absolutely. We're basically looking at how they use drama, these very specific scenes, to argue a financial point.
Yeah.
It's about the rules, the stability, all framed as entertainment.
Let's dive into that game show setup then. Scene 1. The branding is key, right? Social Security. The casino jackpot that never hits, powered by D Investment Enterprise.
Yeah, that title does a lot of the heavy lifting immediately. You know it's going to be critical.
So the skit opens, frames the whole Social Security system as this slightly tacky, high-energy game show. Social Security jackpot.
Bright lights, maybe a bit overwhelming.
Totally. And the host character, he's all smiles, probably a bit too much. And he hits you with the opening line. It's gold. You want to do the honors.
All right. Picture this cheesy host voice, clears throat, adopts exaggerated tone. Welcome back to Social Security Jackpot, the only game where you pay in for 40 years and maybe win a check.
Lasting slightly. Yes. And then you get that canned, slightly desperate applause sound effect right after. It sets up the whole risk-reward thing perfectly. Or lack of reward, maybe.
That line is the entire premise in miniature, isn't it?
Yeah.
Saying, look, you have to pay in, that's guaranteed. But the payout, that's framed as a gamble, like a lottery ticket you didn't choose to buy.
It puts you on edge from the start. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Which brings us to our contestant.
Ah, yes, the contestant. Described as the your friend type character. You know, the type average guy. Pretty confident.
Confident, but maybe not quite up on the details.
Exactly. He represents that feeling of, hey, I worked hard, paid my dues, I should get what's coming to me.
He strides out there, totally sure of himself.
And declares, all right, I'm ready. I worked since 26. I'm going to get all my benefits. Boom. Confidence.
And that is the setup. That's the assumption the skit is designed to just dismantle.
Because here comes the twist. The host, still smiling, but maybe the smile tightens a bit. He focuses on that since 26 part.
Right. This is where the skit gets really specific, drilling down into a rule that, frankly, a lot of people might overlook. The host says, since 26. Sir, that's 9 missing years.
Oof. And the script probably calls for, like, a dramatic sound effect. A clang. Silence.
Probably silence, then maybe a buzzer. Because suddenly the contestant's confidence just evaporates. The whole joke hinges on this piece of regulatory fine print.
He thought working was enough, but the system in this satire has a different scorecard.
Precisely. And they make it visual. The scoreboard lights up. 35 years required, but his score, only 26.35.
So those 9 years where he presumably worked but maybe didn't earn enough by the system's standard or maybe took time off, they don't just not count. They actively count against him in the calculation.
But hold on, let's clarify that. The skit uses this for dramatic effect, but how does it actually work? Is it fair to call it a trap?
That's a good question. Is the skit exaggerating for comedic and critical effect or reflecting a harsh reality of the rules?
It's reflecting a specific and potentially harsh reality of the calculation. Social Security benefits hinge on your average index monthly earnings, the I, and that formula specifically looks at your 35 highest earning years.
Okay, 35 highest. So if you only have 26 years logged in the system with substantial earnings,
then for the purpose of that 35-year average, the system plugs in 0 for each of those missing 9 years. 9 zeros averaged in with your actual earnings.
Ah, okay. So it's not just that you don't get credit for those years, it actively pulls down the average used to calculate your benefit.
Exactly. Imagine averaging 9 zeros into your salary history. Depending on your earnings level, that could slash your calculated benefits significantly, maybe 25%, maybe more. The skit's argument is that the mathematics of the system treats those missing years catastrophically.
Right. So the satire isn't just about the rule existing, but the impact of not meeting it, even by what seems like a small margin to the contestant.
That's the core critique embedded in the joke.
And the punchline drives it home. Zeros flash, maybe a sad trombone sound, and the host delivers it still with that game show smile.
Ooh, looks like you brought zeros to the table. Sorry, no jackpot today. The comedy comes straight from that collision. The contestant's lifelong assumption versus the cold, hard numbers on the board.
It's brutal, but it perfectly sets up the next layer of the critique.
Which is about the uncertainty. Scene 4. The contestant is crushed, obviously. He asks the logical next question, wait. So what do I get? After all that time paying in.
Right. What's the consolation prize in this rigged casino?
According to the skit's host, it's pretty bleak. He replies, kind of blunt. A smaller check. Maybe. If the system still exists by then.
Wow. Okay, so they pivot from the specific 35-year rule critique to a much broader swipe at the system's long-term stability.
That maybe. And that if the system still exists, that's where the satire gets really dark. It introduces doubt about the entire foundation.
How effective do you think that kind of, fear-based argument is? Does it motivate people or just scare them?
It's a potent tool, especially if you're trying to push people towards financial independence. By sowing doubt about the reliability of the default system, you inherently make the alternative, taking control of yourself, seem more appealing, or maybe more necessary.
Which leads us neatly into the skit's proposed alternative, Scene 5. The tone shifts, right?
Yeah, it cuts away from the game show. We get this deadpan character described as the you perspective, like the voice of reason or the voice of the skit's intended lesson speaking directly to the audience.
Okay, so this character wraps it all up. What's the final message?
It's a direct contrast. The character says something like, they spent 40 years waiting on a check. I spent 3 years building an engine. Guess who's laughing now?
Building an engine. That's the key phrase. So the skit contrasts passive waiting, just paying in for decades,
with proactive creation, taking a much shorter but presumably more intense period, 3 years, to build something independent.
What do you think they mean by engine, practically speaking? It's a metaphor, obviously, but what kind of action are they hinting at?
It implies creating an asset or a system that generates income or value outside of traditional employment and mandated systems. So maybe it's spending 3 years intensely learning a high-value skill, starting and scaling a business, mastering real estate investment.
Something that you build and control, rather than something you just contribute to and hope for a return on based on rules you might not fully grasp.
Precisely. It's about agency. Trading decades of compliance for a few years of focused construction. That's the core financial alternative being pushed.
And this whole package, this skit, is itself a structured asset. We should touch on that proprietary nature again.
Right. Important context. The sources state this skit, Social Security, the casino jackpot that never hits, is part of the LoopLaugh series.
And it's explicitly identified as licensed audiovisual intellectual property, managed by the financial engine, which is connected to D Investment Enterprise, LLC.
It reinforces that this isn't just random comedy floating around. It's a deliberate piece of communication, treated like a product, designed to deliver a specific, copyrighted financial viewpoint. The medium is part of the message structure.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive. We've seen how a pretty entertaining, if cynical, game show format is used
to land some sharp critiques. First, on that specific 35-year earnings calculation, how zeros can dramatically impact your benefits if you fall short.
And second, on the broader, perhaps more unsettling theme of systemic uncertainty. That maybe, if it still exists, line.
And both those critiques serve to highlight the skit's main takeaway, the contrast. The difference between passively contributing for 40 years versus actively building something, an engine, in a focused, shorter time frame, like 3 years.
From dependence on the system to independent creation.
Exactly. Expectation versus creation.
So the final thought we want to leave you with, building directly on this skit's premise. If you were to take that building an engine idea seriously, if you decided not to just wait on that check, uncertain rules and all, what specific financial engine would you choose to build in, say, 3 dedicated years?
What would your engine look like? Something to think about. Until next time on The Deep Dive.